Hello and welcome to Newsnight. I am Ladi Akeredoluale. It's our pleasure to have you join us for today's program. Is there a link between the crisis involving farmers and herders, now a very serious national security challenge, and the environmental impact of climate change, particularly as it concerns the Lake Chad? Would it be correct to say the migration and movement patterns of cattle herders, which has seen them move southwards in search of water and food for their animals, is a direct consequence of the nation's failure to pay attention to desertification? Equally important, what's to be done and what is being done to improve the situation, as well as help Nigeria fulfill its obligations under the Paris Agreement on Climate Change. Newsnight talks to the Minister of Environment, Dr. Mohammed Abubakar. Honorable Minister, thank you for your time. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Let's start from something that is related to what people are talking about the most now, which is the issue of movement. This is one of the things that affected herders, for example, to move into areas where people did not see them previously.
Right.
And this is the desertification process in the north.
Right.
Some of us, while growing up, remembered the tree planting exercises of those days,
exactly,
when people were asked to do that to stop the movement,
right,
principally of the Sahara Desert,
right,
towards Nigeria.
Right.
But it seems as if, in spite of our efforts, that has happened. So this, those whose livelihoods depended on those areas are having to seek other pastures. What is the situation in that area now, and what is government doing to repair the damage?
Okay, desertification has been a problem, especially in the upper northern part of Nigeria. And what is aggravating or exacerbating the situation is the removal of vegetation. You see, the way the environment is made up of, vegetation helps keep the soil in one place. The roots of the trees, the vegetation itself slows the movement. Where you have people cutting trees, removing the vegetation, then it's easy for the sun to roll. So now that that has happened, what can we do? Revegetation, afforestation, reforestation. Because definitely the forests provide all kinds of livelihood for the people that live in that area. And once it's gone, then it's gone. And people move inward to look for greener pastures, is what it said. We have various programs in which the government is doing. One of them that is specifically designed to stop the desert from approaching is the National Agency for the Great Green Wall. And that is specifically designed to do that, establish to stop the desert by planting trees, different kinds of trees, especially ones that are indigenous, that can be easily maintained. So that agency is there, its work is specifically for that, and is getting funding in addition to the normal budgetary yearly funding of the ministry. The president is given additional intervention from the ecological fund, is given from the natural resource fund. This is all to stop the desert encroachment. Then there are other programs. We have the National Afforestation Reforestation Program, in which the Forestry Research Institute of Nigeria, which is also an agency, is coordinating anything to do with planting of trees. Is also involved in making sure that more and more trees are being planted. At the same time, we have the Federal Forestry Department, which is all that this ministry is also involved in planting of trees. These are all efforts to make sure that the desert encroachment stops. But then just recently, there's an arrangement between the federal government and World Bank on a program specifically designed also to improve livelihood in that area. It's called ACRISAL, Agroclimatic Resilient for Semi-Arid Landscapes. Okay. What this intends to do is to increase the amount of not just vegetation, but people to be able to adapt and to be able to perform in the presence of that adversity, but at the same time involving the locals. If you have a project that does not have the buy-in of the people, that project is likely to fail. So what this does is it brings in the locals planting of the trees, maintenance of the trees, everything that is to be done will be done with the people. It will be designed and implemented with the people in that. So this is what the government is doing in these various ways to make sure this desert encroachment stops. Otherwise, the influx of people into the inner city will increase. And of course, you know, anytime you have this loss of livelihood, it has also issue on security. Right. The harder farmer clash, and then even just ordinary crimes is also part of lack of livelihood in that area of the upper desert.
Now, as you were talking, I was trying to imagine some of the areas where this is already going on. Could you give us an idea of some of the areas?
Let me give you an example of an area where, let's take Lake Chad for example. This is a lake that has been providing livelihood for hundreds of thousands and millions of people. There are like 4, 5, 6 nations around that place.
Right.
It was providing fishery, agriculture, all kinds of things. The drying of Lake Chad has exacerbated crime in that. In fact, not only it has exacerbated crime, but has predisposed individuals to being recruited by either terrorist organizations or criminal organizations of all kinds. So now there is an effort worldwide, not just Nigeria or these countries, to resuscitate Lake Chad. That will go a long way in reducing the level of crime or instability in that particular area. Fortunately, our president is leading the effort by the African countries around that area to resuscitate the Lake Chad.
Lake Chad, yes.
During the 2019 UN General Assembly, he made a case for that and the total amount of money that will cost. So you see, when you resuscitate Lake Chad, it's not just the water that will come back, the agriculture will come back, forestry, other vegetations, all kinds of livelihood activities will come, and there will be a lot of stability, increased food security, and all that.
Now, let's take it a bit further inwards, because I mean that's desertification. But further inwards, there are other things that are happening.
Right.
You have pollution.
Yes.
That is ongoing in many places, particularly the cities,
yes.
The main cities, Lagos, Port Harcourt, Aba, and so on, Kaduna, Kano. And a lot of people, when they talk about this pollution, they say, what's government doing about this?
Yes.
What's going on? This,
right.
The people, the pollutants, if
right.
you like.
Right.
What's being done about them in terms of improving just even the air
right.
that people are able to breathe?
Well, we have several programs that deal with pollution, and particularly air pollution control. And as you rightly mentioned, some of the major cities, of course, industrial cities like Lagos, like Port Harcourt, like Kano, Abia, and the rest of them, Onisha, and the rest of them. We are looking at various ways of tracking the air pollution. So what we did in several of these cities, we have installed equipment that will monitor the air quality, how much pollutants are being put out in the air. Like in Lagos, for example, we have 6 areas where we have installed this monitoring equipment that will monitor how much is being produced in Lagos. And we intend to replicate this in all the other major cities where we have this issue of air pollution. Also, if you go to the oil and gas area, of course, we have the problem with gas flaring. Gas flaring has been an issue, has been a problem. Honestly, if we look at it very well and carefully, and we can harness this methane that is being flared and turn it into electricity. So based on that,
which is something that we don't have.
Exactly, and also additional jobs. So what is happening is that now there is a program with the Petroleum Resources Ministry and Ministry of Environment to find a way to cap this and harness it into electricity and other forms that can be used. So 2 things or 3 will be generated here. 1, the air quality issue will go down, jobs will be created, and where we can harness and produce electricity, you will have also electricity being produced. something that we really need here in Nigeria. Also, what we intend to do with these monitoring stations is to replicate them also in at least every single local government, because it's not just the
major cities.
The major cities. You have places where there's a lot of burning of trees, burning of everything. That is why the ministry also banned the exportation of charcoal, because any kind of burning in the open is producing carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, and depending on whatever you are burning, will have other chemicals that will be produced. And these are the same chemicals that are causing what is called the global warming, eating up the ozone layer. So the government is doing quite a bit through the annual budgetary provision, and then also working with World Bank. For example, the project in Lagos is being partly sponsored by the World Bank. So we are working with international organizations for funding, capacity building, equipment to address this issue. Government is very much aware. With bad air quality, people tend to be sicker, especially respiratory sickness. So there are a lot of programs.
Now, I shudder to think, if I ask you, for example, about the air quality in a place like Lagos, do you have it, from what you've seen so far, can you give us any idea about what it's like and what it was when you started monitoring it, and maybe what it is now? Is there been any changes in any way?
Oh yes, naturally. The thing is also we have our enforcement agencies that make sure that companies that are just ordinarily releasing their emissions without anything, now they have to install things like pre-treatment systems that will catch through their smokestack, that will catch the hazardous chemicals. So yes, there is an improvement, but it's something that has to be consistent, and we have to enforce, because unfortunately some people think by cutting corners they are increasing profit, but what they don't understand, not just the people that they are causing to be sick, but even they themselves, because you are breathing the same air, not different from the people you are causing to get sick. So we believe that things will get better, because it has happened in many cities before. I've worked in the United States, and Los Angeles used to be very terrible. We know China is one of the most polluted, some of their cities. Sometimes you can't even see. So they will get better. With all these interventions, the monitoring, reducing the pollution, enforcement, impact assessment, all these are bound to make sure it reduces. And we are willing and ready to issue penalties where necessary. But in environmental arena, first what you want is to have people to comply. It's cheaper for people to comply and not pollute the environment than to allow them pollute it and charge them penalty. Because by the time you come to clean up, perhaps the amount of penalty you collected may not even work. And also, in addition, people might have gotten sick, have spent time at home, spending money to buy medicine, suffering and all that. So the best thing is corrective measures.
I want to drill down a little bit about the Niger Delta that you mentioned, because that's one area that when people talk pollution, when you hear pollution or environmental pollution, that area comes to mind more often than not. You've mentioned one of the results, which is the issue of the gas flaring.
Right.
There's acid rain, there's the pollution of the water in that area, oil spills and all of that. It seems a lot, actually. And there is the issue of the impact of EIAs, that's environmental impact assessments, on some of the things that are going on there.
Right.
Because this involves international companies in many instances, the oil companies, for example, are all international. Do you think that we are doing enough to bring it or bring them to see that, as you just finished saying, this is in their own interest too? Because in the past, for example, in the case of gas flaring, they were prepared to pay penalty rather than comply, because the penalty was so small.
It's cheaper for them.
That's right.
Yeah.
So what's the situation there now? Because each time people in the Niger Delta talk, the second thing out of everything they mention is environmental pollution.
Right. Okay. In the Niger Delta, yes, one of the major things you will hear is the HYPREP, that is Hydrocarbon Pollution Remediation Project, undertaken by the federal government. This is a program or an issue that has been outstanding for years. Previous governments have made mention they will, but really none of them has ever done anything. Finally, Mr. President came in 2015 during campaign. He promised to do it, and voila, he has done it. In 2016, it was flagged off to start with Ogoni.
Right.
And this is a program that is supposed to address the Niger Delta entirely, but you have to start somewhere. As I speak with you, we have so far remediated 16 lots in the Niger Delta, meaning they have been remediated from the pollutants, and the soil there can be used for agriculture now and other livelihood. Unlike before, when they are totally contaminated, they are really a source of disease and suffering. Of the 16, 6 have been certified and handed over to the community. The others are in the process of being certified, but they have been remediated. And this is all...
is this all in Ogoni land?
In Ogoni land.
Okay, so the communities that have been handed back some of this is in Ogoni land?
Is in Ogoni land.
Okay.
The current clean-up project is in Ogoni land,
right,
in the 4 local government of Ogoni.
Right.
Kana, Gokana, Eleme, and Tai.
Right.
That's where the work is going now.
Right.
But in the end, when this is done, then it's going to
move
shift to other areas of the Niger Delta. And this is in collaboration with the international oil companies and the federal government, which is, this ministry is the one actually supervising the project. So that is one. I have mentioned the gas flaring earlier, which is also part of the issue with Niger Delta. Then we have also the issue of illegal refining, or we call them artisanal refiners. And these are really causing some serious problem with the cleanup effort. If we are doing the cleanup and somebody somewhere is doing some kind of illegal refining or artisanal, as they may call it, is further polluting. So the government also is, the ministry is also talking with these people and trying to find a solution. The program of the hydrocarbon pollution remediation has invaded a number of things, including livelihood for the people of that area, so that it will be a holistic address to the issue. Apart from oil, also there's a program that is teaching the people various kinds of skills. We just handed over 6 projects of water, provision of water for the people of Ogoni. And this is one of the things embedded in the report of UNEP, United Nations Environmental Program.
Right.
Yeah. So these are things that we are addressing holistically. We have the buy-in of the people. We just restructured the project, the people that are in charge, involved, and we have included additional, more competent people that will take care of the project. The people seem to be happy that now there are more people from that area that are involved in the cleaning, that have leadership role in the project. So far, so good. I can say we are making tremendous progress in the Ogoni cleanup and in controlling oil pollution. We have an agency that is called NOSDRA,
yes, National
Oil Spill and Detection Agency. Theirs is to keep track of oil spills from anywhere, not just from the digging of oil itself, but even trucks carrying oil, tankers, even simple filling stations. This is the job of NOSDRA. So, and we are very much focused. They have serious presence in the Niger Delta because that is where the problem is. But also inland, they have personnel that are tracking the movement of trucks carrying oil of any kind. Also, various filling stations. They check and make sure the underground tanks are very well installed, no leakage, because it affects groundwater. So, in that respect, I can say we are making a lot of progress.
Let me take you to the southeast.
Yes.
Where it seems as if they have a different type of problem.
Right.
Which is principally erosion.
Yes.
From time to time, you see houses perched on the tip, about to fall over and so on, and then you find that they're talking about the ecological fund
right,
to come to their aid and
right,
all of that.
Right.
How much cooperation are you getting from the authorities in the southeast towards being able to help them attend to the erosion problems? Because some of those problems, as some of the governors have pointed out, are really big. They are big problems. They are bigger than what any state can tackle on its own.
Right. Well, we're realizing that, we try to work with the state government, international agencies. Southeast is a peculiar problem because of their geological disposition. The soil there is a different kind of soil. It's loose, it can get waterlogged very easily and move, what is called mass movement.
Right.
And that is why you can just see a house sitting today and just very soon you'll just start to see it move and just, fall into the gully below. First of all, we have three ways of trying to fund and address the issue of erosion in the Southeast. One is the normal budgetary provision for the ministry. If you look at our budget, you will find a lot of provision for the erosion sector. Now, the situation there is bigger than really our budget. So the second way is we now approach Office of Ecological Fund, which can help tackle the big, huge erosion issues. And they have been also intervening. Mr. President has been approving a lot of intervention to the Southeast on erosion. Third, we have the new map, which is also a collaboration between the government and World Bank. And new map is Nigeria Erosion Management and Watershed Management. That also has been accomplishing a lot of big major gully erosion in the Southeast. So with these three sources of funding, we are really doing very well taking care of that. And again, it's not by accident that almost every time erosion projects seem to be more in that area, because that is where...
Yeah, because that's where they have that particular kind of problem.
The most. Even though we have erosion in all over Nigeria, only that the magnitude is more in other places, and specifically Southeast, some other part of the South, upper North, you name it.
There is also, as you were talking, it also occurred to me that there was the issue of flooding even.
Yes.
Because that also creates all kinds of environmental
Absolutely.
problems, apart from the health problems that they create.
Right.
How are you coping with those? How challenging are those?
Flooding is a natural phenomenon. It's something that has been happening right from the beginning of time, even before the advent of man on earth. Now, that was natural. Today, we have two kinds of flooding. We have natural, and then we have man-induced flooding, interfering with the floodways, or waterways rather. Rivers are designed to flow freely. So when you start either building in floodplains, or when you start carving certain areas, shrinking riverbanks, or altering the riverbanks, you are bound to have problems. So starting with the natural natural flooding. The natural flooding is, do not build in floodplain. We know a river maintained, let's assume is 10 meters, the width of that river. You have another meter or two that is supposed to be left for increased flow. Should we have a heavier rainy season?
Yes.
Or something like that? Well, people just move in and build in that. Well, big mistake. Once you do that, you are encroaching into the waterways and you get flooded. And then we have the man-induced. If we start from, let's go back into urban flooding. Every time, in every country, in every city, you have building permits, and they come with specifications that you need to build this kind of gutter, this width, this, that, so that runoff water coming from rainfall can be able to flow to the streams, the smaller rivers, and then into the river, of course, down to the ocean. Well, people do this, they cut corners. Either they shrink and build very little gutters, or some even don't just build.
At all?
At all. So water will come, water will go. Water will find its way whether you give it or you don't. And it's better you give it. Because if you don't, if it finds its way, you may not like it. It will find its way into your bedroom, your bed. We have seen how when floods comes. Then you have also dams. We are part of the intervention that man does, for our livelihood, and this is the interference with nature. sometimes these dams will overflow or will burst and are bound to send floodwaters. People are not ready and it comes. So wherever you have dams, also you should have measures taken. That's why we have the environmental impact assessment, which is also being done here in this ministry.
Yeah.
That's why we also have the enforcement department to make sure you conform to all the rules and regulations that will stop flooding from occurring, because it can take everything away, including human lives. We know many times when they are flooding, people die. So these are some of the things. And then we have the enforcement agency, we have the impact assessment, and we always also preach to people to heed the warning, because we're all part of the problem and we must be part of the solution.
Speaking of problems, as you were talking, I remembered that you are a member of what is now known as the Presidential Steering Committee on COVID-19, what was known as the Presidential Task Force.
That's right.
And I'm wondering if, as some people said, that COVID-19 helped improve our environment, because it stopped a lot of things that people were doing at the time, and by the lack of movement for extended periods of time and then limited movement, things like air quality improved, waste disposal was problems were reduced, and so is that true?
Very true. You know, as they said, for every disappointment, they said there's a blessing or something like that.
Yes.
Indeed, the coronavirus has dealt a very severe blow to the entire globe, economically and otherwise. Human capital, you name it. But interestingly enough, the environment itself had some reprieve, a reduction in emission, a reduction in waste, a reduction in a number of things, especially during that lockdown. The problem of emission is what is really causing the global warming. I had mentioned this earlier.
Yes, you had.
So these pollutants have reduced drastically. Therefore, we can measure, I don't have the number, but I'm sure at the scientific laboratories, they can tell you a little bit of something that the environment globally has enjoyed in terms of reduction by shifting to actually cleaner production, use of cleaner energy in terms of electricity, moving away from the fossil fuel to solar energy, to wind turbine energy, and any other source, or converting energy from biomass. These are all sources of energy. And it is no wonder that this year, almost every conference that you will find, with whether United Nations or any other, you will find the issue of cleaner energy to make sure you maintain this little gain. And it should be a lesson for tomorrow.
Let me then talk about something you mentioned a little bit earlier, when you talked about the environmental impact assessment, and then you talked about enforcement.
Right.
Many of the rules that had been in place before, many of the rules that govern environment or environmental issues have been in place for quite some time.
Yeah.
What had been missing, some people would point out, is enforcement. People buy generators that spew smoke into the sky and put them in residential areas, not minding what is happening with their neighbors, and they put the silencers outside,
right.
So that they don't blow in.
Right.
But of course, we've had tragedies resulting from things like this.
Absolutely.
Just to take a common example.
Right.
But at industrial scale, at state and national levels, we have this going on. And it points to the issue of enforcement.
Yes.
What are you doing differently to ensure that this enforcement thing, resulting from whatever it is that EIAs show, is rigidly followed?
We are reviewing our regulations, developing policies. In other words, the legal framework in which not only you can enforce, but you can penalize. The enforcement is as an agency of its own. The environmental impact assessment is a department. Together, they complement each other. So the enforcement is what we are now strengthening. And we had new policy, new regulation. Right now we have, I think, about 4 new regulations that we are developing. And it has to do with all kinds of enforcement that maybe before are not getting the attention that they deserve. Either some of them have become obsolete, or even the penalty is just so minuscule, as you have mentioned earlier, that some might prefer to pollute and pay penalty because it's small. And that's why we are changing this situation to make the penalty unattractive. We are looking for money to run things, but not money from pollutant. So if we make it unattractive, that you can't pay, your only option is to comply. That is what we want. Money can come from other sources. So that, then the impact assessment also, we are now enforcing that very seriously. You are building an industry, you will have to provide environmental impact assessment, social impact assessment, all kinds of impact, strategic impact, environmental impact assessment. So that we are keeping track of everything. And if you don't, we have regulation, we have policies, laws that will penalize you.
Let me bring you to something that affects everybody now, which is waste disposal. That's another very obvious form of environmental issue, pollution, and everywhere. Nigeria generates a tremendous amount of waste.
Yes.
Partly because we haven't possibly taken note that waste disposal is something that is very important and is now an industry on its own.
Absolutely.
If you take Lagos, for example, the amount of waste that Lagos alone generates is enough to, in some words, pollute the whole country, depending on where you look at it. But what are we doing differently this time? Because we hear of waste to wealth programs, initiatives that turn things from this to electricity, from this to gas, from this, but they don't appear to have taken off in Nigeria or taken off very well, the critical mass.
They are taking off. We still have some ways to go. We are still looking at more innovative ways of treating the waste. There are different kinds of ways to produce electricity out of waste, to produce other products, to even produce oil. There is this process where you can process waste, produce electricity, and produce oil that is called crack. It's like some kind of diesel.
Okay.
It removes the waste from the environment, it produces electricity, and then you have this. So there are so many things that we are doing currently. And this ties in with our NDCs, what is called nationally determined contributions. We are currently reviewing that. We just added waste and water into our NDCs. This is the commitment we made during the Paris Agreement in 2016, that we will reduce emission in the fight against climate change. We'll reduce emission by 20% by last year, 2020. And then we'll reduce emission by 45% by the year 2030. But the 20%, we can do it on our own, unconditionally. The 45%, we definitely will need assistance from international organizations, from other developed countries, whether with funding, capacity building, equipment, and all that. And that's what the agreement says, and we are doing that. So in the review...
Did we accomplish, I'm sorry to cut in, did we accomplish the 20% last year?
Yes, I can say we accomplished. The calculations and all that is ongoing because the year just ended.
That's right.
Yes, so, but from the programs that we put out then,
right,
from the time we made the commitment to date, we have reduced emission to at least that 20%.
Which was the target.
Which was the target and the commitment. Of course, from within also, the ministry has built quite a number of waste recycling plants, including plastic recycling plants around the country, and we are still building. The objective is to build at least one in every state. What we do is we build these plants, waste recycling plant, hand over to the government of that state, and now require that a private entity be asked to join in. Anything you have the private sector participating, there is more likely of it succeeding because it's profit driven. With the government that is not profit driven, sometimes you have this issue of laxity. So we are really moving forward with this, including metal. We just commissioned a metal scrap recycling plant in Port Harcourt about, I don't know, 4 or 5 months ago, last year sometimes. And we have also commissioned other waste recycling plant. We have commissioned a plastic, which is working here very close to us in Karu. There are so many at different stages right now, and we intend to make sure we have built enough of those and invite the private sector to join. Waste is no longer a menace, it's a resource, and we intend to treat it that way.
Now, three types of waste either generate the kind of things you're talking about or create problems with their disposal.
Right.
Partly because they don't decompose easily, they're very difficult to pack.
Right.
We're talking here about plastics, which you
Yes.
mentioned earlier on,
Yes.
nylons,
Right.
which you also talked about, and then there is the natural occurring one, which is water hyacinth,
Yes.
which chokes off marine life. Now,
Yes.
if we take them one by one,
Right.
You've already talked about, to some extent, plastics.
Right.
But maybe you should drill down on that and then link it to the issue of nylons, because
Right.
everywhere you go in the country now,
Right.
you have all kinds and types and shapes of nylon bags
Right.
everywhere.
It's all part of the effort for the recycling. And also, that's why we are bringing in the private sector. We know of a number of them that are already having people or kids to collect these plastics, nylons, and everything and bring it to them for a fee. And that, I believe, will help generate employment, one, for the kids, and to remove it, and then to bring it and produce some other product. That is all ongoing. And we are moving really. In fact, we just had a national plastic management policy approved by the Federal Executive Council last year. And this has component of the government, the private sector, NGOs, everybody, within and without. So expect to see a more vibrant policy activities of taking care of these plastics and nylons in the very near future. It's all being geared towards taking off very strongly because it's available. That's the thing. You have no short of resource, raw materials. It's right there for the taking.
Yes.
So
we generate so much of it.
We generate so much of it. So that is there for plastic and nylons. Now the hyacinth that you are talking about, yes, we have all kinds of natural plant that will be choking up the waterways. We are just looking at currently a way to really use those. We are moving into what we call the nature-based solutions.
Okay.
Use the environment to care for the environment. For example, we have done something in the Nguru wetlands in Rhodesia, removing those plants that are choking the waterways. Today, we have water that is flowing, now going back to Lake Chad, flowing back to Lake Chad. You can say just a minuscule beginning of recharging the lake. That itself will not recharge it, don't get me wrong, but it's a starter and also freeing the area. Now we also have a little bit of navigation in that area. The same thing with the water hyacinth. You can now move it. We are looking at various ways that it can be used as other product so that it's nature to nature. So that is also ongoing, and the ministry is taking it very serious. It's part of our, even in this in our medium-term plan is in there.
Now, do you think awareness is part of the problem? Most people don't seem to know. I mean, for those who have had the privilege, like you, of traveling outside, particularly in Europe and the United States, you pay a price for the use of nylons and plastics.
Absolutely.
Apart from the product
Right.
that they convey, you
Right.
pay a price. If you
Right.
walk into a supermarket and you buy things, they ask you, do you want a bag or not?
Right.
If you ask for a bag, there's a price for that bag. That's apart from the fact that they, of course, produce recyclable bags and all of that. I'm wondering if here, the critical mass of the population hasn't quite gotten this information that you and I are discussing. If that is so, how do we get that information to them? Because I still see people throw away bags, plastics, and so on, and ask for new ones instead of reusing the ones that they have.
Well, unfortunately, sometimes habits are very hard to kick off. However, we have component of this sensitization, educating the people on the menace of plastic and the importance of bringing those plastics to recycling centers. So starting with kids that will collect these plastics and bring them, you will see other people will get the idea to do it. But habit is, like I said, very hard to kick off. We'll have to continue with the sensitization, with the education for people to do the right thing for the environment. And in the process of doing that, have a clean environment, be healthy, and make some money. We will continue to do that. And that is, okay, thank you for bringing that. There is also a circular economy. The traditional economy is linear. You produce, you use, you dispose.
That's right.
Now with all this, climate concern, global warming, waste and all that, we are looking at ways of this circular economy where you reduce, first of all, how much waste you produce. You recycle, you reuse, you repair, you recover. This is what circular economy is all about, so that products stay in circulation longer, saving the environment, saving the resources, saving money and making money at the same time. With circular economy, which is picking ground now, interestingly enough, Nigeria is one of the major players, and I am one of the leaders of the circular economy, particularly here in Africa. We are always holding virtual meetings and where possible physical. It's something that if we turn to, a lot of things can be accomplished. So it's one of the ways, and that has to do with the plastic. You can recycle and reuse for end of life. And with the circular economy, we have what is called the extended producer responsibility, EPR. This is where we task people, the importers, the producers of plastic, to be responsible for the life of that plastic from production to its end of life.
Right.
This is also a program that is gaining ground. I just had a virtual meeting yesterday with the Africa Alliance of Circular Economy and pushing that forward. This is an old
idea that has just gotten
a new phase, a
Right.
new facelift.
Right.
Exactly. Because in environment we have cradle to grave. Essentially, yes, you produce, you take care of it.
Until it completely
goes
disappears.
Right. So we are now pushing that more openly with the circular economy.
As we're winding down the interview, I want to take you international now. And you've mentioned it a couple of times in the course of the interview when you talked about our commitments under the climate change, the Paris Accords, and so on.
Right.
Most Nigerians didn't even know, and I'm sure there are quite a number of them who don't know, that Nigeria has any commitments under the climate change, the Paris Accords.
Right.
You've talked about some of those commitments now, and this is where the international collaboration comes in. How are we doing on that front? Bearing in mind that some of the really big polluters, there's always been this argument that they have succeeded, they've become successful and wealthy. Now they want to stop others from using the same method to succeed with this climate change issue. How is Nigeria doing in that regard? What is our position, especially when you know, as you do as Honorable Minister, that a lot of our people are still very basic. They haven't scaled into the advanced living of things, and therefore the avoidance of the use of things like coal and other such huge polluters may not be affordable.
Well, yes, it has been a problem, and sometimes still a problem now. It's sometimes a tug of war. So that's why when we go to international conferences, every country will go with a group of negotiators to sit and negotiate so that we are not getting the short end of the stick. Very right. The developed countries are the ones that really polluted the planet more so than us. Now, there was a time when it was agreed that everybody will have to now reduce pollution or emission by 18%. Everybody, including us, developing countries, when you have already polluted too many times. So, and this was what brought about, just concluded in the last few months, what is called Doha Amendment. It was a return to the original agreement to now amend. A lot of countries refused to sign. It took years because we are looking at, no, there is no equality in the payment because you have polluted more and you are still polluting more. And you are telling us not to do this, not to do that. Okay, fine. If we will not, you will pay part of the cost. We are not saying we want to pollute, but we should be empowered to be able to develop with good clean energy, with new equipment, in different ways that can save and conserve resources and still be able to move forward. In other words, become resilient. So it was then agreed the developed countries will be assisting in that, and that is that 45% of ours, with the condition that developed countries help with that. Where are we? How are we doing from 2016 to date, especially with Paris Agreement, because that is what is going on right now? We are doing very well, just like I have mentioned. In the area of reducing emission, we are working in the area of energy, what is called energizing education. The Ministry of Environment is working with Ministry of Power, Ministry of Education to use solar energy in certain places. Currently, about 9 federal universities are being energized. Some of them have already been energized and are working on solar. Okay. Some are in different stages. Of being energized to move away from the energy as usual to solar, clean energy with no emission, zero emission. And this is part of trying to meet up our own commitment. This is also what is showing the international community that we are doing something. The 45% that we said, we're not just sitting waiting for them to do, but so that they can see we are making that effort and they can now bring their own
funding to
assist so we can achieve that 45%.
Honorable Minister, thank you so much for your time.
You are very welcome.
That's Newsnight today. We would, of course, like to hear from you on what you've heard on the program and much more. Our social media handles are right there on your screen. You can also listen to this and previous episodes of the program via our podcast. Visit our website, channelstv.com, and go to podcast. I am Ladi Akiridoluale. Goodbye.